I didn't think anything of it when Jeremy called me out of the blue. We hadn't talked in over a year, not since graduation. He was one of those guys who floated through college like everything came easy. Good looks, good grades, and enough charm to make professors go easy on him when he forgot his homework. We were never close, but we'd shared a few classes, worked on a group project once, and had just enough late-night talks over beers to consider each other sort of friends. So when his name popped up on my screen, I hesitated before answering. "Hey man," he said, casual, like we'd spoken yesterday. "Jeremy?" I asked, sitting up straighter on my couch. "What's up?" He paused for just a second. "So, this is gonna sound weird, but I need a favor." "Not what I expected." He laughed nervously. "My sister's getting married in 2 weeks. The whole thing's out on this vineyard in Mendocino. Fancy, big family affair, all that. And, I told them I'm bringing someone." I waited, he continued. "A guy. I told them I'm dating someone. Which I'm not, obviously. But I sort of panicked because they were being weird about me still being single and... yeah, so I need someone to pretend to be my boyfriend for the weekend." I laughed. I actually laughed. "You want me to fake date you? At your sister's wedding?" "Yeah," he said without missing a beat. "Just for 3 days. You'll get a free trip, good food, nice views. I'll pay for everything, obviously. I just need someone who can sell it. You're smart, decent actor, not a complete asshole. Plus, you're already out. They know about you," I blinked. "Jeremy, you're not even..." "I told them I'm bi," he cut in. Which, technically, might not be a complete lie. I don't know. I haven't exactly figured it out yet. But that's beside the point. Look, I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. And I don't know what it was. Maybe the way his voice dropped when he said that last part. But something in me said yes. 2 weeks later, I was standing outside a rented black Audi, watching Jeremy smooth his shirt in the side mirror, while I tried not to think too hard about the fact that I had agreed to spend an entire weekend pretending to be someone's boyfriend. Someone I barely knew. "You ready?" he asked, grabbing the handle of his suitcase. I shrugged. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Just remember," he said with a half smile, "you love me. You're completely smitten. We've been dating for, like, 3 months. Met through mutual friends. Still in that adorable, disgusting honeymoon phase." I laughed. "You've put a lot of thought into this." He didn't answer right away. I had to. The drive up was surprisingly easy. We fell into conversation like no time had passed. Music, work stuff, bad dating stories. Jeremy had a way of making things feel less weird than they were, like it was totally normal to ask a college acquaintance to be your fake boyfriend. By the time we reached the vineyard, the sun was dipping low, casting everything in gold. The place was stunning. Rows of grapevines, rolling hills, a main house that looked like it had been plucked out of a magazine. His family was already there. "All right," Jeremy muttered as we stepped out of the car. "Showtime." I followed Jeremy up the stone path, trying to remember everything he'd told me in the car. His sister's name was Lauren. His parents were Tom and Denise. His cousin Emily would probably flirt with me just to test me. And under no circumstances was I to mention anything about Jeremy's ex-girlfriend, whom his mom was apparently obsessed with. By the time we reached the front door, I was sweating, not from the heat, but from nerves. "You got this," Jeremy murmured. Then he reached out and did something that completely threw me off. He took my hand. It was casual, like we'd been doing it forever. His palm was warm, fingers slightly calloused. I froze for a second, then forced myself to go with it. "Smile. Relax your shoulders. Play the part." The door opened before we could knock. A woman in her early 30s, Lauren, I assumed, squealed and practically launched herself at Jeremy. "Oh my God, you made it!" she cried, hugging him tightly. Then she stepped back and turned to me. "And this must be Daniel," Jeremy said smoothly. "My boyfriend." I stuck out my hand, but she ignored it and hugged me too. "So nice to meet you. I've heard so much." That made me glance at Jeremy, but he just smiled like this was all perfectly normal. The introductions came fast after that. His parents were polite, even warm. A few cousins hovered nearby, clearly trying to get a read on me. It was overwhelming, but also oddly easy. Jeremy never let go of my hand. He made jokes, told stories, added little touches, his arm around my waist, a quick kiss on the cheek, that made the whole thing feel disturbingly convincing. That night, we had dinner on the patio overlooking the vineyards, long tables covered in string lights and candles. Jeremy and I were seated next to each other, flanked by his cousins and an overly curious aunt who kept asking how we met. I went with what we rehearsed. We met at a friend's birthday party. He spilled red wine on my shirt. Jeremy chuckled. He said I did it on purpose to talk to him. "Did you?" the aunt asked. Jeremy turned to me with a mock-serious expression. "That's between us." Everyone laughed. I felt a weird flutter in my chest. After dinner, we walked back to the guest house Jeremy had rented for us. It was small but cozy. One queen bed, a tiny kitchen, a porch with 2 chairs overlooking the fields. I dropped my bag by the door and turned to him. "So," I said, "1 bed." He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly sheepish. "Yeah, sorry. I figured if we were really dating, we wouldn't book 2 rooms. And it's not like we haven't shared a bed before." "We haven't." He blinked. "Right. Thought we had. Must have been someone else." I raised an eyebrow, and he gave me a crooked smile. "Hey, I don't snore, and I stay on my side. That makes one of us," I muttered, pulling off my shoes. He tossed a pillow at me. "Don't make it weird, man. I'm not the one who called this a honeymoon weekend." I shot back. He laughed, and something about the sound, soft, genuine, made the space feel less awkward. Later, lying in the dark with barely a few inches between us, I stared at the ceiling and tried to slow my thoughts. The day had been surreal, but it was Jeremy's hand brushing lightly against mine in the sheets that stayed with me. Neither of us said anything. But we didn't pull away. I woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds somewhere outside. For a second, I forgot where I was. The ceiling fan, the soft sheets, the unfamiliar warmth next to me, it all clicked a beat later. Jeremy was still asleep, sprawled on his side, face half buried in the pillow. His hair was a mess, sticking up in wild directions, and his mouth was slightly open. He looked different like this. Softer. Less performative. I watched him for a second too long before rolling out of bed and slipping into the kitchen. He'd brought coffee beans from some boutique roaster in the city and had actually ground them last night, like some kind of psycho. It was only 7:30, but the vineyard was already awake. I stood on the porch with a mug in my hands, watching the sun rise over the rows of vines. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, my stomach was in knots. We were faking it, but I wasn't sure where the act ended anymore. He came out about 20 minutes later, shirtless, hair still a disaster, holding his own cup of coffee. "You're up early?" he mumbled, sitting down in the chair beside me. "Couldn't sleep." "Because of me?" I didn't answer right away. "A little." Jeremy didn't press. He just sat there sipping his coffee, the silence between us more comfortable than I expected. The day was packed. Brunch, wine tastings, family photos. I was introduced to more people than I could keep track of. Jeremy never let me drift too far, always finding a way to brush against me, crack a joke, pull me close like we'd done this 1,000 times. His mom cornered me during one of the quieter moments. "He's different with you," she said, watching him from across the lawn. I blinked. "What do you mean?" she smiled. "Calmer. More himself." I didn't know how to respond to that. That evening after dinner, we snuck away from the main house and walked down to the edge of the vineyard. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, and the cicadas were just starting their nightly chorus. Jeremy walked in silence, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his jeans. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but he didn't look at me. "It's weird, isn't it? Pretending like this." I exhaled. "Honestly, It doesn't feel like pretending half the time. He stopped walking. Yeah. That's kind of the problem. We stood there, side by side, the silence stretching too long to be casual. Finally, he turned to me. I wasn't lying about not knowing, he said. About the whole bi thing. I didn't say anything. I could tell he wasn't done. I think I told myself it wasn't real because it was easier that way. Girls were easy. Expected. Safe. But then you walked in yesterday, and I saw you, and he laughed, but it was short, tight. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I looked at him, the tension between us thick and uncertain. Then stop pretending, I said, voice quieter than I meant. His eyes met mine, and before I could think it through, he stepped closer. He didn't kiss me, but he wanted to. I could see it, and part of me, okay, all of me, wanted it too. But instead, he stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Not yet, he said, not here. And then he turned and started walking back toward the house, leaving me alone in the rows of grapevines, heart thudding hard against my ribs. Jeremy didn't say much that night after we got back to the guest house. He was quiet, distracted, pretending to scroll through his phone while I washed up and changed into an old t-shirt. The air between us had shifted again, tenser now, but in a different way. Like we were both waiting for something neither of us knew how to start. We got into bed without speaking. No more playful touches, no fake snuggling, just silence. I lay there staring at the ceiling, half expecting him to say something. Apologize maybe, or explain why he almost kissed me but didn't. But he didn't, and I didn't ask. The next morning, his sister's wedding was all anyone could talk about. Hair appointments, floral deliveries, last-minute chaos. Jeremy and I were mostly left alone, which I thought would be a relief, but it just gave me too much time to think. He kept looking at me like he wanted to say something, but he never did. It wasn't until we were getting dressed for the ceremony, him in a navy suit, me in a tailored black one, that he finally broke the silence. "You look good," he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. I glanced over, surprised. "Thanks. You clean up all right yourself." He smirked, then looked down. "So, about yesterday." I froze slightly while buttoning my shirt. "Yeah?" He didn't meet my eyes. I meant what I said, about not knowing, about needing time. I nodded slowly, unsure if this was leading to something or just him clearing his conscience. "Okay, but I want to figure it out," he added, his voice a little quieter. "With you?" That stopped me. "Jeremy, this was supposed to be fake." "I know," he finally looked up, "but it doesn't feel fake anymore." I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything. The wedding, the acting, the fact that he was still holding onto that damn tie like it was the only thing anchoring him. "You sure this isn't just about the weekend? The pressure, the pretending?" He shook his head. "No, I was pretending long before this weekend. You just made it harder to keep doing that." We didn't say much else after that. Just finished getting dressed and made our way to the ceremony. The vineyard looked unreal in the late afternoon light. Rows of white chairs lined the lawn, the altar framed by flowers and grapevines. Guests milled around, dressed in pastels and linen suits, sipping champagne. We took our seats near the front, Jeremy's hand brushing mine as we sat. This time, it wasn't a show. He didn't do it for his mom or the cousins or anyone else watching. He did it for me, and I held on. The ceremony was beautiful. Tears, laughter, vows written with too much heart. Jeremy whispered a dumb joke in my ear about the flower girl tripping, and I almost forgot how weird this whole situation was. Then came the reception. Dinner, speeches, dancing. We were still holding hands when his mom came up to us during dessert. "I don't know what your plans are," she said, smiling kindly at me, "but I hope we see more of you. You bring out something good in him." Jeremy squeezed my finger slightly, and I couldn't bring myself to look away from her. "I'd like that," I said. Later, after the last dance, we slipped away again. This time, he led me back to the guest house, neither of us saying anything. Inside, he shut the door behind us and leaned against it. I waited. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He crossed the room, cupped the back of my neck, and kissed me. Slow. Sure. Real. And everything in me fell quiet. The kiss didn't feel like something new. It felt like something that had been waiting, like a knot, slowly loosening. A breath finally let out. Jeremy's lips were warm, a little tentative at first, but when I leaned into him, he deepened it, hands resting at my waist like he wasn't sure where else to put them. When we finally broke apart, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. Jeremy exhaled, still close enough that our foreheads almost touched. That was overdue. I gave a quiet laugh, nerves finally catching up with me. "You think?" He nodded, brushing a thumb along my jaw. I kept telling myself this was just a performance, that it didn't mean anything. And I'm a terrible liar. We ended up sitting on the bed, shoulder to shoulder, neither of us really knowing what to say next. I expected awkwardness, second-guessing, but none of that came. Instead, it felt calm. "I've never done this," Jeremy admitted after a while. "Done what?" He hesitated. "This. With a guy. All of it. I mean, I've kissed someone before, years ago, but nothing serious. You don't have to explain." "I want to," he said quickly. "You deserve to know what you're getting into." I turned to him. "I'm not expecting anything specific. I just want you to be honest with me. That's all." Jeremy nodded. "I can do that." He reached for my hand again, like it was instinct now. That night, we didn't rush anything. No grand declarations. No pretending. Just two guys figuring it out. Slowly, carefully. We talked until past midnight, our knees bumping under the sheets, voices low in the dark. And for the first time all weekend, I wasn't playing a part. When morning came, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning. We packed our things slowly, neither of us eager to leave. His mom hugged us both before we got in the car, and Lauren, freshly married and glowing, gave us a sly look and whispered, "You're good for him." Jeremy rolled his eyes but didn't deny it. The drive back was quiet at first, both of us lost in our own heads. But somewhere around the halfway mark, he reached over and rested his hand on my thigh. I looked at him, and he gave me a half grin. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "I want to figure this out, with you." And I believed him. The weeks after the wedding were strange in the best possible way. I kept waiting for reality to crash down on us, for Jeremy to pull away, to chalk everything up to a one-time thing, but it didn't happen. If anything, he leaned in more. He texted every morning, called on his way home from work, and started showing up at my apartment with takeout like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I let him. Correction. I wanted him to. We didn't define anything right away. There was no big conversation about labels or expectations. It was all unsaid but understood, this thing quietly building between us. I noticed the way he'd reach for my hand when we crossed the street, or how he'd watch me when I wasn't looking, like he was still trying to figure out how we'd ended up here. One night, a few weeks in, we were lying on my couch, feet tangled together, the TV playing something neither of us was really watching. Jeremy shifted, turning to look at me. "Do you ever think about how weird this is?" I glanced at him. "You mean you pretending to be my boyfriend and then actually becoming my boyfriend?" He smirked. "Yeah, that part," I shrugged. "I think about it. But it doesn't feel weird." "Why not?" I paused. "Because with you, it feels easy, real." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded like he needed to hear that more than he realized. "Good," he said softly. "Because I don't want to go back to pretending." Neither did I. Things weren't perfect, of course. There were moments when Jeremy would get quiet, especially when someone mentioned his ex, or when he ran into people from college who only knew him as the straight guy, but he never shut me out completely. One night, after a long day, he showed up at my door looking tired and a little distant. "You okay?" I asked as I let him in. He nodded, but he didn't say much. Just sat on the couch, staring at the floor. I sat beside him, gave him space, and waited. Finally, he spoke. "My mom called earlier," he said quietly. She wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. Okay. She asked if you'd be coming with me, I blinked. Wow, that's soon. I didn't know what to say, he admitted. I froze. I said I wasn't sure, and now she probably thinks I made you up. I gave a small laugh. Well, to be fair, you kind of did. Jeremy looked over at me, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. I didn't mean for this to get serious, but now that it is, I keep wondering if I deserve it. My heart tightened. You do. You're figuring it out. That's not a bad thing. I'm just scared. I know. He turned, his voice softer now. Would you come with me, for real? As my boyfriend? I didn't even hesitate. Yeah, I would. He reached for my hand again, and this time, it wasn't about pretending, or comfort, or habit. It was about choosing me, choosing us. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a phase or an experiment. It was the start of something real. Thanksgiving came quicker than I expected. The whole drive up to his parents' house, Jeremy was unusually quiet. Not in a bad way, more like thoughtful. Like he was mentally rehearsing 1,000 versions of how the weekend might go. You sure they're cool with this? I asked as we turned down the familiar tree-lined road leading to his childhood home. He glanced at me, then nodded. They're trying, that's what matters. His mom greeted us at the door with the same warm hug she gave me the first time we met. No hesitation, no side eyes, no weird questions. You hungry? She asked, already ushering us toward the kitchen. Dinner's not till 5, but there's plenty to snack on. His dad was more reserved, but even he managed a small smile and a handshake that didn't feel like a performance. The whole house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere I hadn't earned. Jeremy never left my side. He guided me through every introduction, every cousin's comment, every awkward pause. And somewhere between the mashed potatoes and the second round of pie, it hit me. This was our real life now. That night, we stayed in Jeremy's old bedroom, which felt like a time capsule. Posters of bands he no longer listened to, a bulletin board still cluttered with high school photos and faded movie tickets. I stood near the desk, running a finger along the edge of an old baseball trophy. Feels weird, huh? He asked from behind me. A little. Jeremy stepped up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. I used to sit right there and think I'd never figure any of this out. And now? He pressed his chin to my shoulder. Now I don't want to picture it without you. I turned to face him, our bodies close in the dim light from the hallway. You know this wasn't how I thought my life would go, I admitted. Getting a call out of nowhere to pretend I was dating you. Driving up to a wedding and falling in love like it was nothing. Jeremy's eyes softened. But it wasn't nothing. No, I said. It was everything. We didn't need more words after that. We fell asleep in his twin bed, limbs tangled, the hum of the old radiator filling the quiet. And in the stillness of that childhood room, something settled between us, something sturdy, honest, quietly alive. This wasn't a story about pretending anymore. It wasn't a weekend fling or a one-time experiment. It was two people, stumbling into something real in the most unlikely way. And for once, I didn't need to know what came next, because I already knew who'd be there with me.